My next guest says the industry's historical pricing power makes them some of the best positioned to handle tariffs. Simeon Gutman is an equity analyst at Morgan Stanley doing soft lines and hard lines. Simeon, I can't imagine what the past 12 hours for you has been like. Welcome.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
So where would you focus our attention? I mean, is it on the five below? Look at the divergence in just the dollar. So I think Dollar General is in the green because they have a relatively small exposure to Southeast Asia.
So grocery, consumable, domestic, that's the theme of the day. And it's obviously a flight to safety. So the grocers, even Walmart and Costco, high mix of a grocery penetration, 75, 80%, mostly domestic. There's a couple of hidden ones. You talked about auto parts. I saw the last guest talked about protection somewhat from Mexico in last night's tariff. Auto parts has good pricing power. And if prices of new cars are going to go up, in theory, we're going to have to take care of the used cars a little bit longer. Beauty, another sector. Beauty products get mixed and poured in this country for the most part. So those are the tariff-free sectors. That's the theme of the day. But, nothing is safe. There is really nowhere to hide because retail is generally an imported sector.
Now, I don't know if you cover RH specifically, but a question from Amy T. Dawson. She said, I've been waiting forever for RH to drop so I can buy. If you can't handle that specifically, maybe you can broaden it out to the stocks, in your coverage universe. Kohl's worst day ever, Gap, Urban, Victoria's Secret down 20%. Are these opportunities to pick up some of these names as the dust settles, or would you caution people away from trying that strategy?
I mean, look, there's a lot of paths this can take. I think there's going to be potential counter tariff to the tariffs that were implemented yesterday. We'll see where that goes. High risk, high reward. We do look at RH, and it is an interesting name. Obviously, there's a growth scare now that's happening in the macro economy and the consumer economy. How the consumer absorbs, call it 30, 40% tariffs, broad-based at the same time. We've never seen this before. There is no playbook. So there are opportunities, risk reward, Restoration Hardware. The opportunity is a brand that's at a cycle bottom. It's a durable good that feels at the bottom, and they have some top line momentum. The risk is they have a high amount of leverage going into what could be a growth slowdown. Those are the opportunities. But the cleanest balance sheets, good brands, good underlying demand with a relatively balanced portfolio of domestic and international sourcing, those are the places to look.
What do you make of the Vietnam tariffs? Do you think that's a big reason why? I mean, if it weren't for that, let's just say that they came out and said Vietnam tariffs are zero. Do you think companies like Nike or even Walmart, would they be holding up better today?
Yeah, we've watched the supply chain migrate over the last 5 years. And it was like perfect order from China down to Vietnam, thinking that was fine. I mean, nothing is safe at this point. Entire Southeast Asia, I think a previous guest was mentioning that. But yeah, without that, it means that the rest of the supply chain, literally everything that's imported, most imported in apparel, in footwear, in our world, flooring, furniture, toys, electronics, everything is part of it now.
How many of your companies do you think are going to absorb this instead of trying to pass it along?
Well, they're all going to try to pass it along in some form or another. And this is what we're working on spreadsheets trying to figure this out. If you take what happened in the prior list 1, 2, 3, and 4 tariffs, there was a relative sharing. We think about half of the prior tariffs were absorbed by the makers or the vendors. And then if you take the rest of that 50%, we think about half of that was taken by the retailer and the rest of it was passed on to the consumer. That's not an unreasonable framework to think about at this time. There's obviously some positioning happening, and you saw Walmart and Costco were mentioned by the news as working with vendors and trying to mitigate, but that's going to be the template. We'll see how much of that can get done. But at this point, you can't reposition your sourcing. There are no more options for that until there is more manufacturing that can absorb it.